1 second. Okay, hello everyone. Brett Heimann here with marketingagency.com. We are live with my man, the myth, the legend, very good friend of mine, and just expert sales trainer, David Omachonu. Dave, how are we doing today?
Doing amazing. Thank you for having me. Really excited.
No, and I appreciate it. I know this group's going to get a ton of value, and I'm in a soundproof room right now, so that's why you see this in the background. So don't mind that. But Dave, we've worked together in the past. You've helped me in my agency and also with marketingagency.com put different sales processes together, and I mean we've really seen the results of it. So I mean that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on here, because I'm a testimonial of what your work can do and what your program does. So thank you again for joining me. And for people that don't know, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, give a little quick introduction.
Sure, yeah. First of all, thanks for those kind words. I'm glad you got some value out of the program. Like Brett said, my name is David Omachonu. I am from Miami, Florida, and I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in sales since 2012. I've been an entrepreneur since 2009. And I've been focusing on selling products in, at this point, about 12 different industries.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's been quite the journey. In recruiting, so I did healthcare recruiting. I jumped into IT sales at a Fortune 500 company called Citrix. Then I started a real estate investment company where I was trying to buy and sell real estate. Got into sales again professionally at another Fortune 500 company called Paycom, doing payroll and HR sales. And yeah, I've been doing consulting work of different services, business planning, marketing planning, writing sales presentations. I do a little bit of acting as well, which is a kind of random thing that's a little associated with sales. Workshops, trainings, and seminars. And I own a consulting business right now, and we sell sales training services and products. And yeah, just been having a lot of fun. And clearly, I love sales, so really happy to be here and share some of my knowledge.
And you're also very good at it, so that also helps, right? So, so what I want to dive into first, right, is the psychology of sales, right? I think it's something that a lot of people are very scared of, especially first-time entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, right? If you don't come from a sales background or you don't have a ton of sales experience, it could be a little frightening to pick up the phone and dial. It could be a little bit frightening to kind of get on, to a little intimidating to see who's on the other end of that phone, right, at first. So, for anyone who's new in sales or someone who might not just be the best in sales, how do you start, right? Like for you, when you deal with your clients, what is the first thing in which that you talk about when it comes to mindset?
So that's a great question. So for me, it's always been about understanding that fear is contagious, right? I think some of you, I know you probably heard me say that before.
That's real. Yep.
When you're on the phone, picking up the phone and dialing, you have to understand if you're filled with doubt and uncertainty, that's exactly the kind of clients that you're going to be attracting. So the first place to start is understand that you're doing a job. You're here to, probably make money, make a commission. But more importantly, you're there to deliver value to a client. So you're calling to help them. So there should really be no fear. You're just doing your job and you're calling to help them out. So that's like the first mindset thing that I always start with.
Okay. Okay. And in terms of, I think we've actually had this conversation right in depth, and, with sales specifically, right? I mean, it really starts with your why. I think people get very discouraged. I think if, for personally speaking, back in 2013, when I first got into the digital marketing world and, when I was trying to close clients, and, I remember one guy that I was working with, he was like, hey, here's a list of leads, just pick up the phone and start dialing, right? And there was like 1,000 leads on there, and I ended up calling every single one of them. And I think I got like 2 appointments off it. I mean, it was horrible, right? And it was extremely discouraging. But, I think the thing that I wasn't as aware of now as I am now, especially with the family and things like that, is understanding, what your why is. And I feel like when your why is strong enough, it makes sales a lot easier because you understand that it's not really an option, but more so a necessity, right? So maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, look, I'll share a story with your audience. Listen, if you get into sales and you're commission only, that's a pretty big why, because, you can't eat unless you're closing business, right? You can't pay for your car bill. You can't pay for your insurance. You can't pay for your rent or your mortgage, right? So, I've been in places, I'm not there now, but I've been in places when, literally every other month the electricity was off
Yeah.
because you're in sales and your business is so inconsistent. You have a lot of cash flow inconsistencies. And so, when your why is big enough, you don't have the excuses to make like, oh, I don't want to make the call. It's like, well, if you don't want to eat tomorrow, then yeah, it's fine. Just don't pick up the phone and dial. But when you have a big enough why, it makes sense. And, it's funny that you said that because it's so true. At all of my seminars, I usually give away, gifts and things like that, gift cards. And I always ask the same question. I say, listen, guys, if God forbid somebody who you loved and cared about was in a compromising position, like they got kidnapped, right? And you had 3 months to write a check for $1 million, right? What are you gonna do? If you don't get the check in 3 months, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Right? It's always the same, whatever it takes. And oftentimes we don't apply that same level of like desperation and commitment to our business. And if we did, we would be selling like crazy because a lot of people don't want it. That's the way I look at it.
No, and that's what we spoke about, right? And I mean, it's true, man. I mean, every day that I'm not selling or every day my team isn't selling, it's a day that's kind of taking money and food out of my family's mouth. And that's my why, right? And other people have, whether it's to support their own family. But when you told me that, I mean, that really hit home with me. And, that's kind of lit a fire under me. This was 7-8 months ago,
Yeah.
and that was, so no, that's great. And I hope everyone's listening. Guys, if you're tuning in live, hashtag team live. If you're tuning on the replay, hashtag team replay. The more likes, comments we get. And if you have any questions for Dave while we're here, we're going to do a quick Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions of sales or if you've ever wanted to, ask a sales expert on anything, now's your time to do so. So, and what I want to jump into now, Dave, is to talk a little bit about there's different types of sales, different types of sales process, right? You have your outbound sales, which is more direct outreach, a little bit tougher, a little bit, more of a grind. And then you have inbound sales, which, I feel like both of them have a two completely separate sales approach to them, right? And how you should handle each one of them. So from your experience, how do you handle each one? And how would you recommend agency owners, course creators, really any entrepreneur, any business owner, how would you recommend them going and approaching each one?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll start with outbound, which is my favorite. It's probably a little contrary to me. So with outbound, it's always the same process for me. It's always, you start with an intro, right? If I'm calling, I'm doing the intro. That's like my approach. My approach is, let's take a step back actually. If I'm doing outbound, I always have to call plan a little bit. So I do what's called 3x3 research. So that's basically find 3 pieces of information on whether organization or whoever you're calling and try to find it in 3 minutes, right? So just research on the company, something new that just happened, a new press release, a new product or service that they're releasing. And now you have something to like at least bring to the table that proves that, you've taken time to research and, you care about their business. So that's where I always start with outbound. Then I make the call, right? And hopefully if I have a strong introduction, as in like a referral contact, or I know somebody who works there, that's really like the strongest way to go in, because a familiar name always gets people's sensories tingling, so to speak. Oh, that person, great. Oh, my boss. Wow, that's great. And all of a sudden their guard is now dropped because you're someone familiar. So I try to find someone in my network or someone that I can refer to kind of get in and use that. So yeah, intro, however you want, an introduction. Oh, I saw something online and it sparked my interest. I want to reach out to you because of this. Just have something relevant to bring to the table, as opposed to, hi, this is David with ABC Widgets. I wanted to talk to you about buying widgets. Like no one's going to respond to that. You know what I mean? So start with the call plan, then get into your introduction. And then after that, you kind of want to figure out, what can I help them with, right? So now you're going to ask a couple questions. I do a light discovery on those initial calls. So light discovery, couple general questions. How big is the organization now? I know you guys started, 1935. How have you guys grown since then? Really, really casual, right? Because if you think about it, when you're direct outreach and it's a cold call, this person has no idea who you are.
Right.
You have to understand disrupting your day. So honestly, the vocal tonality needs to be like, hey, listen, like, I know I'm disrupting your day, but I just have a couple questions because I just work with a company just like you guys. and we helped them go from A to Z in 3 months. So I think we can do something similar. So I just wanted to reach out and kind of see if I can. So that's my approach, just really in a condensed version. That's really what it is. And I literally plug and play with any product or service I'm selling. Like same approach. Real estate, another thing I sell, same approach every time.
And you're not trying to sell anyone on the first call, right? I mean, it's really to set that appointment, to set that follow up, to really, right? I mean, is that the approach for you in direct outreach?
That is exactly it. That's the only next step. That's the one thing you're trying to sell, right? Is the appointment. So once you start getting into like a lot of like deep product or service questions, you just say, listen, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about. I think it'll be better if we can kind of meet in person, or if it's scheduling a call to do a demo, whatever your process is, depending on what you sell. Always the appointment is the only thing you want to sell. So, funny objection handling approach that I use is like whenever they ask, what is it about? Like, how much does it cost? Oh, I say the same thing every time. Mr. Customer, it's not going to cost you anything unless it's exactly what you want. So that's why I wanted to show it to you first, to make sure that, it's at least something within your realm of interest, and then you can kind of make a decision from there. So I'm looking at my calendar, next week at Thursday, around 2 or 3, what time works better for you? Just smoothly go right into the appointment close and keep it going. I know you talk about that all the time as well.
You've done that a couple times, huh? Looks like you've done that a couple times. And I guess my next question, and that's great, right? And that's gold, because that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand, especially when they're first starting out with sales, is, less than probably, what would you say, 2% of you're going to close on the first call anyway, right off that initial interaction, if you're lucky, right? I mean, I would say maybe a little bit less than that. So I think it's important to understand, for everyone to understand, like, when you're making that initial interaction and it's somebody, a cold lead, don't really go into it with the mindset, hey, I'm going to close them on the phone on this first one, but rather, hey, let me get that appointment, right? And let me get their undivided attention for 30 to 45 minutes out of their day, so I can then understand what their biggest problems are and how I can help them solve them, right?
100%.
No, and I kind of want to dive into that, right? And I think for us at marketingagency.com, and how we, with one of our programs, we teach people the agency sales cycle, right? And we break it down into 4 phases. And one of them is the introduction phase, where if it's a cold introduction, it really like your first communication touch with that prospect. The next step is the interview phase, right, where we talk about their biggest pain points and problems. And this is all based off of what we've worked on. And my question is to you is, how soon is it to bring up price, right? I feel like that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs get wrong when they're talking to prospects, is they bring up price too soon without showing any perceived value, with something like a proposal or a presentation or something in which that they can show and justify to charge those premium prices, right? Now, for you specifically, at what point is it, okay to talk price?
For me, it's always when I know that they're fully qualified.
Okay.
So this is what I do with qualification. I use a process called BANT.
Okay.
So BANT, and that just stands for budget, authority, need, and then timeline.
Can you say that one more time? BANT, B-A-N-T?
Yeah, BANT.
And what does it stand for?
And budget, authority, need, timeline.
That's gold.
And yeah, oh my goodness, it's so, because the real reason why it's gold, Brett. It saves your time. It helps you disqualify or qualify people appropriately. So it allows you, because as you said earlier, right, not all sales are going to be, 1 day closes or even 1 week closes. And offensive, the service offering is going to be, it can be months for the sales cycle. Just was the wrong time for this client. So when you understand, if they have budget allocated to spend on, ABC service or product, right? You ask that. Then I ask the authority question, which is, am I speaking to the decision maker? Who else is involved in the decision-making process? How many approvals you need, and making sure that all those people are on the call. Because if you're talking to like the manager and like you need like his manager's approval, well, now you're just going to have to like get another appointment with everyone in the room. So that's like another thing with the authority. And then N is the need. So you want to really understand what they need. It's like just specifically. So in my industry, like with real estate, I always have to find out, do you want to be east of the highway or west of the highway, right? You need 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. And the same thing with the sales side, right? And in the sales business that I have, it's the same thing. I need to find out, how many salespeople do you have? How soon are you trying to implement this new process that I'm sharing with you? So it's always a qualification. And then the T is the timeline. And this is by far the most important thing, which is going to tie into your original question about when you ask price. If they tell you that, you know, they want to do something by the end of the month, right? Well, that's good, but now you have to dig a little deeper. Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, what happens if you don't get this implemented by the end of the month? And if they have a compelling event, like some reason that's going to be like desperate for them to make a decision, then now you know, like, you can actually present the person because they have to make a decision or else this happens.
Right.
So like in real estate, you know, when someone tells me they want to buy a house this year, I'm like, great, you know, I'm literally making it happen at all. But if they say, hey, I need to buy a house next month because my lease is expiring and I have nowhere to go, well, now, you know, I'm calling them that day.
Right.
So
there's a little bit more of a sense of urgency to actually convert and to get it done, right? I mean, that's essentially what it comes down to. And do you feel like there's any, you know, I know that sense of urgency is important, right, from a client or a prospect perspective, but from a salesman perspective, how do you get them to, I guess, understand or get that clarity that they have that problem, right? That if they don't move out or they don't find a home in which they're going to be pretty much out on their own trying to figure it out, right? So is, you know, understanding one that the client has this problem, right, or the client understands that they have this problem, but how do you kind of I guess dig deeper into helping them understand, hey, you're going to be shit out of luck if you don't find a home, right? So what are some ways in which that you kind of go about that to dig into this, you know, your prospects' biggest pain points?
Yeah, it's really about the questions that I ask them. I ask them, you know, hey, Mr. Customer, what happens if you don't move in at this point? And they give me the reason.
Right.
And then I say, wow, so like, if you can't move in, then like, what are you going to do at that point? And I don't think generally, but what you want to do is just keep digging into the pain.
Yeah.
That's really the whole goal. Like once they tell you something that's like kind of a problem, keep digging in and getting to the root of it. And, you know, plug and play depending on the industry, right? How you're going to approach, like how you're going to dig into the problem, but just keep digging, keep asking questions, right? So if we give a live example, you know, hey, you know, Mr. Customer, if you can't move in by next week, what happens? Oh, wow. Well, you know, I'm going to be kicked out of my apartment. Wow. So where are you going to go if you're kicked out of your apartment? Well, I'm probably going to have to live in my mom's house. Wow. Okay. But where are you going to put all of your items, all of your belongings? At this point, I'm going to have to buy storage. Okay, but isn't that going to like mess with your debt to income? Because now you're going to have to be spending additional cash on the storage. And I just keep digging in until they understand that that's not a solution. The only solution is buying. And that's my approach. You know, that's the way I do it. And honestly, it works. You just have to be non-manipulative about it. You have to be a trusted advisor. So they're not going to trust your recommendations unless you show throughout the whole sales process that you really care about them and you're looking out for their best interest.
And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, right? And it's that, you know, you hear it all the time, is that people don't buy because they like you. I mean, I know a lot of people that I would never give $1 to, right? You know, or not like that, but I would never hire them for a service, right? But I would hire someone in which I trust. And I think that's huge in building that trust, right? And, you know, what are some ways in which that you build trust with your clients, or how you teach people how to build trust with their prospects?
Yeah, it's really just a 3-step process. It's a great question. The first step is information. So I'm a firm believer that people care about competence above a lot of things, right? We talk about, you know, authority and position yourself as an authority figure. When was the last time you really questioned, you know, your doctor, right? When's the last time, like, if it's finding, like, these are people that have demonstrated that they've done a lot of research. They're very prepared. And as long as you have legitimate knowledge, people don't question you that much. So that establishes a baseline foundation of trust. The next thing is perception. Now, that's all about how you dress, you know, who people see you around. You know, right now it's just basically another way of saying branding, right? You know, if you go on, you Google somebody's name, what comes up? What does the public think about this person? And then lastly, it's all about conviction, right? So, you know, you can talk the talk, but, you know, when you're put on the spot, how do you handle it, right? You know, anyone can brand and take pictures and, you know, do a video and do like 100 takes and get that one good take that seems like they're confident. But, you know, like a bunch of executives trying to make a decision, you know, are you going to step up to the plate? So you got to be prepared to really have that conviction And I think that comes when you're actually confident because you have knowledge. So
Okay. Yeah,
that's
no, I
how
mean
to create that trust.
yeah, no, I mean that seems. I mean, guys, I hope everyone's paying attention because these are things in which you should be writing down and taking notes, especially if you're someone who's struggling with sales or not where you want to be with sales. And next, I want to jump into inbound, right, which is a little bit of a different approach, right, because it could be someone opted into one of your newsletters, it could be someone scheduled a strategy session with you or a consultation. How is your approach a little bit different with an inbound lead rather than an outbound?
So for me, an inbound lead, I treat them I go a little softer, a little bit softer.
Right.
They're calling me, right? So they've done their research. If I have the right kind of software, I probably know where the lead's coming from.
Yep.
So I'm just curious when they call me. I'm like, hey, how's it going? How's everything? Hi, this is David. Whatever they're asking me about. I just want to learn. What inspired them to call me. What are they looking to do? All my real estate calls and my business consulting calls, it's funny, they're always the same. I just ask very open-ended questions. So tell me a little bit about your situation and let's see if I can actually be able to help you. My whole approach is diagnosis before prescription.
Yep.
Right? If you don't know what the customer's problem is, how can you be so confident that you have a solution to solve it? That's the first thing. The other thing is it's another quote. I don't want to be Mr. Philosophy, but dig your well before you're thirsty, right? All sales cycles aren't going to be, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. This person might be calling and they might just be kind of just starting their process. They just want to learn a little bit more information. So just really feel it out. If it's over the phone, really, really listen to like vocal tonality and see if there's really a sense of urgency. Try to ask those qualifying questions to see if like they need to make a decision now and like what happens if they don't make it now. But it's honestly a comfortable call. Just don't push it. Like they already called you. Just establish trust and just be somebody that they would want to work with either now or in the future, and secure your business for later.
No, that's absolutely awesome. And one thing I want to touch on and what you just talked about is that the sales cycle, right? And that is, I've chased down clients for 6 to 12 months that end up being some of my biggest clients, right? I think one thing that a lot of people struggle with is understanding that, the understanding how many touches it actually takes to land clients, right? It's like they'll make a cold call, right? And that's it, right? The client didn't pick up, or the client picks up and says, hey, email me instead, or, LinkedIn message, right? Whatever form of outreach in which that you're using to try to attract and put through your sales cycle. But I think the big thing there is just understanding that, there's, the big thing there is I kind of just drew a blank for a second. I apologize. But
no, you're good.
Yeah, no, just understanding, right, that that some clients are going to take longer to reach. And depending on the client and the potential of that client, you have to be willing to be okay with, and it's probably similar in real estate, right, where, you have home buyers who are really excited. They'll call you. They'll say, hey, let's go look at some MLS listings. Let's really get this going. And then a year later, they still haven't been there. But the truth is that when they are ready to buy their house, you're that first one there who's kind of guided them through this whole process. And that year worth of work ends up paying off in commission, right? So, I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of how many communication touches you think is acceptable before, you should really kind of push that lead to the back burner and, different types of, outreaches, right? So I know when we worked together, we talked about things like, if you're going to send an email, right, the next step in that would be a LinkedIn message and then a phone call, right? And just kind of touching them from all angles, whether it's, whether you start with a cold call and then go to an email and then add them on LinkedIn, but just kind of using a multi-prong approach to reach these prospects and to continue to try to add as much value first as possible. So I just want you to, talk a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I do a bunch of things, and I think as far as the number of touches, honestly, it's infinite, right? It's like what you have to do is like what you said. You have to determine, is this person ready to buy? And that's why I always take it back to qualifying. Like once you really qualified them, and if you really understand where they are as far as urgency, then just use your time wisely. This person isn't as urgent as like the next person. So you're going to push them out, but you're still going to keep touching them. So yeah, I think, use software and technology to make your life easy, obviously. So set up email campaigns that, automatically send out with information that you already organized. So create like a little funnel. That's like the best way to do it if you're really trying to scale. obviously. So it's like that. This is something that I actually do. I write handwritten cards.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah. So you see how this is DL and it has my full last name. I write handwritten cards all the time. And sometimes I don't even put my business card in there because I want them to know that, listen, I'm just thinking about you. You know, I'm just making sure everything is good. I know we haven't spoken in a while. That's a nice soft way to like regenerate a conversation to a prospect who's dead. Send them a little card. And I made these myself. So I mean, you have to be an entrepreneur about things sometimes, or you can go on websites to buy these. It's really easy. It goes back to your why. You know, at the end of the day, like not everyone's going to be ready to buy right now, and you have to be willing to stay in contact with them. I think at least 6 to 7 contacts is usually what they say it takes to close a sale in any given industry. So you have to be willing to continuously follow up. Successful people in the world, they always say that, you know, you learn the most from your failures. It's like, if we just listen to what they say, these are like billionaires saying, yeah, you know, I failed a lot. You know, I kept trying. It's like, okay, maybe we should just keep reaching out because they might just say yes eventually. Like, if we just listen to what everyone says, I think it actually will work. And, you know, I definitely know it works.
Yeah, and
you know, I teach people. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I had a question in terms of the follow up. Right? Let's say, and I want, the reason why I'm asking is because I want everyone in this group to understand. Right? It's not about spamming someone. Right? It's not about following up with them 6, 7 times in 2 weeks. In your, I guess I know real estate's a little bit different, right? But you know, from your experience, how from the initial touch, how often should you be following up, right? Like, what is, I guess, a baseline or a standard for how often you should be following up with your prospects?
So this is the truth. The truth is, it depends.
Okay.
You have some clients that are high maintenance. They're reaching out to me like 3 times a day. So literally, like, you know, unfortunately, I have 24/7. So some people take it very literally, other people don't. So if you have a really high maintenance client, you got to stay in contact with them because they're looking for an agent or a salesperson or whoever that's going to be willing to be in contact with them all the time. I also have low maintenance clients that like don't even really like to be communicated with unless you have something of value every time. So it really just depends on what extreme the person's at.
Right.
So you have to just be nimble. That's really the answer.
And how do you determine, right? So like these high maintenance clients, and I actually just recently dealt with that situation where I had a client that was calling me 3 times a day, you know, and just wanting things at the drop of a hat. And, you know, obviously he was, you know, paying me enough to do so, but at the same time, you know, at what point do you kind of say, okay, this client isn't fitting, you know, the ideal client in which that I want to work with, right? At what point do you kind of say, you know, this is too much?
If it takes up just absurdly too much time, then I think it's appropriate to have that conversation with them. You know, give them a call. Like, listen, however your personality is, you have to just talk to them and
right.
Just make sure you don't offend their sensibilities. Make sure that they don't think that you're trying to push them off or like to suggest that you don't have the time to deal with them. I really think that conversation is important. It's hard, but I think it's important to just have. You have to kind of just, you know, a mentor of mine told me, you know, sometimes in business you need to create boundaries, not necessarily like friends, right? You know, clients in your ear every day, all day long. I mean, that's a lot of time. And you know, he thinks he's your best friend. She thinks he's your best friend because they can call you whenever you always pick up. There's going to be a time when it's just not going to be that way because you have too much on your plate. So I think setting the expectation with them that, you know, we're going to have a small shift in like our communication just so we can be really, really efficient, you know, things like that. And just being adult about it. That's really it.
Okay. And, you know, I guess now I want to kind of transition right into a few things. One, I want to really touch on, I think a lot of people in this, you know, a lot of people in this group and, you know, some people that I've worked with, some of my students that are probably watching this stream, you know, they always ask me, right, is one, when is the best time to do, if we're talking about cold calling, right, when is the best time to cold call? What are some ways in which, you know, best days, best times, and how do you deal with gatekeepers, right? I think that's something that a lot of people in this group, you know, have been asking and inquiring about, and I wanted to save it for when I got you on here because I know that's, you know, something that you really focus on and something that's your specialty when you're doing your training. So, you know, if you could talk a little bit about, you know, the days, times in which are the best for cold calling, and also how you handle gatekeepers to get that appointment.
Right. So great question. Cold calling for me, in my personal experience, it's always been best on Tuesdays and on Fridays. So Tuesdays, kind of obvious, right? It's right after Monday. You know, everybody's tired from the weekend. Everybody has an excuse on a Monday. You know, everybody's out sick and not at work on Mondays. Everyone's traveling on a Monday. So Tuesdays are great because it's like, you know, you already got past the Monday that everybody hates, and it's just, you just get way more compliance. And I've had more success just reaching people, you know, in the middle of the week as opposed to the beginning. So yeah, I would say that's the best way. You know, there's different methodologies in terms of the time to call people. It also depends if you're calling in an executive, like a VP and higher. There's a lot of research that shows if you call them after 5, you actually get them. The other thing is, you know, cold email, even though it's not cold calling, it's best to send those out super early, like between 5 and 7, because these high-paying executives, they're up early. You know, they're making all this money, but they're working hard too. So those are 2 little tips. Fridays are great as well because it's right before the weekend. So, you know, the rapport that you build is almost predictable, right? You know, hey, John, it's David with ABC Widgets. How are you? Oh, I'm doing pretty well, Dave. Really excited for the weekend. Oh, no way. Where are you headed this weekend? And then now you can get to this conversation. You know the guy's whole story. And before you know it, at the end, you're trying to set up an appointment. Hey, John, listen, man, I hope you enjoy your weekend. Next Tuesday, I was going to plan on passing by your area. It's going to be around in the morning around like 9 or 11. How's that sound for a quick intro? In an appointment, his energy is high. You know, he's excited. He's in a relaxed mood. His guard is down. That's when you attack. So that's my opinion. Just crush it on Tuesdays and Fridays.
Okay, and I mean, I think that's perfect, right? Because you know, a lot of people, they're like, oh, you know, they'll come to me. A lot of my, you know, some of my students come to me and they'll say, you know, why I haven't been able to get through to anybody. And I'm like, well, what time are you calling? They're like, oh, 10 o'clock on a Monday. I'm like, well, yeah, chances are you're probably not getting through to anybody because, you know, any good business owner, right, and any business owner who's serious about growing their business is there before the 9-to-5ers start and they're there after the 9-to-5ers leave, right? And I think that that's extremely important to understand, and also, you know, it's important to understand, and it's also important to kind of take advantage of that. Hey, you know, like a lot of the, and you know, this is something that we've worked with and talked about, but you know, understanding that, hey, you know, from 7:30 in the morning to 8:30 is when I'm making, you know, or my team and myself are making these calls, right? Because we have a better chance of getting through to the decision maker, and I think it's all about probabilities, right? And what your best chances are to get past that gatekeeper. And that's something I want to talk to. I want you to talk a little bit about is when you get a gatekeeper, right? Or you get, you know, somebody who's maybe not the friendliest, or, you know, maybe they're just a little dry. And, you know, how do you handle gatekeepers? And what is the best way to, even if you do get a gatekeeper, get that appointment, right? Because that's really what it's about.
Yeah. So for me, it's always been a long-term play. And by long-term, I mean, it's probably going to take a couple calls, and you have to really create a relationship with the gatekeeper.
Okay.
Right? Befriend them. That's my whole approach. Befriend them. Sound as warm as humanly possible, and not salesy and not too assumptive. Right? Some of these gatekeepers, there's levels to the gatekeepers. Right? Some of them are really skilled and they know exactly what you're doing. So if you call in and you're just fast talking, hey, you know, you're repeating their name too often and just trying to act like you're their friend, you're offending their emotional intelligence, because they know what you're doing. They literally have salespeople call them all day long. So you have to be different. That's like the key. Just differentiate yourself. You know, obviously I can role play and go through a different separate call, but just be warm. You know, that's my whole thing. Like when I call and I'm making a cold call, I'm trying to get through a gatekeeper. Basically, I'm just like, you know, hi, I was trying to reach John. Is he available by chance? Oh, no, he's not. Sorry, he's in a meeting. Can I take a message for you? Great. Not a problem at all. Listen, I was actually calling. Explain why you're calling. Be clear and succinct, and let them know that you're not really trying to sell anything. You're just trying to literally just get on his calendar. Like, and now you're going to befriend them. What's the best way to get in touch with them? I know you get calls from salespeople all the time, and I don't want to be one of those people that you pass through and you get yelled at by your boss. Like, what's the best way in your opinion? And then you can, let's say, the lady's name or the man's name, and just really try to humanize the approach. Be different. No, most salespeople are calling and they're just trying to hustle. They're just trying to say that they know the boss and like, oh, he knows that I'm calling. Like, you can slickly get through some gatekeepers, but a lot of them are going to be offended at your approach. So befriend them, be calm, cool, collected, and understand you're going to have to call like 3 or 4 times. some cases, especially for really hard to reach clients. That's just what it takes.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I think everyone who's listening, guys, you're hearing it here first from someone who's done this at an extremely high level and is doing it at an extremely high level. And that is, the money's in the follow-up. You have to be willing to follow up. You have to be willing to do what other people are not willing to do, and get those extra communication touches, and be willing to kind of go beyond the normal 1, 2, okay, they didn't reach out or they told me to email them something. Well, maybe they're just not interested, which is most times not the case, right? Just because someone says to you, hey, I'm not interested right now, doesn't mean they're not interested. It just might not be a good time right there and then for them to talk to you, right? And Dave, thank you, very much for sharing this. And I want to kind of transition to, we've talked about, entrepreneurs, and we've talked about, if you're an individual business owner, you have a partner, whatever it is, understanding the difference between outbound and inbound and how those two different approaches, how they work, right? And now I want to kind of dive into to businesses that have sales teams, right? As you start to scale, as you're doing, 250, plus in revenue, you're ready to hire your sales team, or maybe you're ready to hire your sales team before, right? It all depends on, your type of business model. But my question to you is, I know you do a lot of sales team training, you teach, how to transform reps, and I know that's kind of a little bit like your bread and butter. Talk a little bit about that in terms of, how business owners can get more efficiency out of their sales team, how they can get more productive and close more sales every month.
Yeah, great question. It's always about incentives. I think that's just a way to drive human behavior in any industry, right?
Yep.
Incentives. So sales contests that are built through and with the sales team. So you got to know what's going to drive people. Like $100 gift card may not drive people. It might not. Getting 2 tickets to like a baseball team's game that they don't care about may not drive them. So understand your sales team, understand who's really involved, and really know what would inspire them to take massive action. That's the first step. The second thing, I honestly believe in training. So like continuous training. I think some level of training every single week is really smart for a sales team. What I used to do is I used to have like a round table, like once a week, at least one day out of the week, you just have a role play session. So if you have like say 6, 8 people on the team, 2 people go first, a role play, typical sales call, right? Trying to get the appointment. That's really the most important thing, is just role playing appointment setting. That is like the key. So do that every week and you're good.
And I think that's something that's really overlooked by a lot of entrepreneurs, right, and business owners, because everyone's focused on just trying to grow their business as fast as possible, right? And I think that there's a real lack of training in which that I've seen, right? And I think again, because you've done this at such a high level, you understand the importance of training and ongoing training, not just, hey, here's a week's worth of training and a couple manuals, here's what our product and services are about, here you go, right? It's about continuous improvement with your sales teams, because eventually, and I feel like any individual, we all progress, right? None of us stay exactly where we are. And if you do, there's something wrong. But I think from a sales perspective, I think you made a good point, is I think training is the most important thing, right? And so from your experience, you recommend businesses do training once a week with their sales team, where they do some role playing, they really take it serious. And I think that's the big thing, is taking it serious, right? Not joking around, not fucking off, and really taking that hour and a half to really hone in and focus on how you can close more sales, right?
100%. Every stage of your sales cycle, whether it's 10 stages or if it's 3 stages, I think every week I would focus on one stage, just so everyone's getting better kind of at the same pace.
Okay. And I know that this might be a pretty stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And I know that, again, we've had this conversation in the past, but, if you're a business owner, right, if you're a solopreneur, you're just getting started in this game, or maybe you have a business partner, right? How much time and energy should be focused on sales and marketing?
Whew. So honestly, it's like 80%, to be honest. But this is what I'll say. I have a nuanced approach to this.
Okay.
I think you should split it up in thirds at the beginning. If you're a solopreneur at the beginning, listen, the most important thing is making sure you have a good product. So make sure you spend adequate time refining that product, whatever the product or service is. Because if it's not good and you're really good at selling and you have amazing marketing, like your customers are going to bash you, and like that's just going to be the opposite effect, right? You're going to lose clients. So at least at the beginning, you're probably more so 80-20. 80% of your time should be focused on product development. 20% on sales and marketing at the beginning, because if you don't have a product that's worth it, I wouldn't be selling it yet. You got to refine the product first.
What about a service though?
Yeah, so a service, honestly, so in consulting, what we talk about is productizing your service. Yep. So your service has to be very organized, has to be logistically conducive for scaling. Right? Like, if it's a service, you have to be doing something at all times, or if you have a team that has to be doing something at all times, you want to make sure that that process is extremely lean, right? I'm certified in Six Sigma. I don't know if I told you that. And that's all about reducing variation and improving predictability. So if you have a service that, it depends, if you're working with 100 clients, 100 customers, let's say, or a company that has 100 employees that are going to use this service versus a company that has 10 employees, how do you make sure you deliver the same value without interruptions and without too much variability in like the quality of the service? So that just goes back again to making sure that the service is really refined and there aren't too many inefficiencies, so that when you get that huge order, you're ready to go. Yeah. You don't have to like grow or like, oh geez, I don't have all the resources for that. So that's why I like to focus on the development of the service and product. And then once you have a good product or service, it's literally the opposite effect. You got to be spending all your time on sales and marketing, like literally all of it. And then maybe 20, 30% on, getting feedback from clients, refining and research and development.
No, that's absolutely gold. And guys, again, I hope you're paying attention. And if you're tuning in live, #team live. If you're tuning on the replay, #team replay. If you have any questions for Dave, he'll, please put them below. And even if it's on the replay, he'll go back and he'll answer them, or we'll get the answers for you. Really try to pick his brain, because there really is, not many people in the industry that are doing it at the level he's doing it at and how efficient he's doing it. And again, I'm a walking testimonial to his training program and what he's, what we've been able to do with our agency and marketingagency.com. So, Dave, thank you very much. And, one last thing I want to ask before we kind of start to, head off on this interview is,
sure.
At what point do you feel like it's acceptable to start hiring a sales team? At least, a head of sales, that can manage, because, what happens is if a lot of people, they hire appointment setters, right, and things like that, and they might do all commission-based structure, but there's no one to really manage those appointment setters, because you're out there trying to grow your business, you're out there trying to get new business, you're dealing, as an entrepreneur, or maybe you have a partner, but, you're wearing multiple hats, right, until you're at a level that allows you to delegate. So, in your opinion, your professional opinion, at what point do you feel like it's acceptable to start hiring a sales team?
Yeah. So for me, it's two things. The first thing is, once you reach your maximum capacity on your own, where you literally cannot do anything else on your own at this level to have maximum efficiency and productivity in what you deliver. So as an example, for real estate, I'm almost there where I'm going to have to grow my team larger, because if I get to a point where I have too many listings, I can no longer deliver the same level of service to all of my current clients. And it's a great problem, but that's the first thing. When you have maximum capacity, that's when you got to be thinking about, okay, I need to grow. But the reality is you have to be in an economically feasible position as well, right? You have to have the resources available to allocate. And you have to have a strong enough process and product that you're going to be able to continuously pay the people you're about to hire. So economic feasibility and maximum capacity, those are the two factors that drive me to knowing, okay, this is time to scale. You have working capital available, you have funds ready to allocate towards, hiring and growing your business. It seems like you're at capacity, you have to grow. So
that's a great point, and I hope everyone's paying attention. And before we wrap this up, Dave, do you have anything else that you want to talk to the audience about, or anyone in this group? I mean, I know that you've dropped a ton of valuable nuggets in here, and I'm greatly appreciative of your time and all that. And so if you have anything in which that you want to talk to the group about before we kind of sign off here, floor is yours.
Yeah, I've pretty much said most of it, but one thing that I heard recently, it's about the fact that the development of your product and your marketing and sales pitch, those should not be mutually exclusive. And what I mean by that is, you can tell people how great your product is. You can tell people how amazing you're going to be as the operator of whatever product or service you're selling. But if the development of the product and if the product itself isn't as good as what you're selling, you're just basically lying to customers, right? And I see a lot of sales reps do this because they're really persuasive, right? They know how to sell basically anything, right? They can sell water to the ocean, right? But if you don't really have that super valuable product, you're making a mistake. So I think you gotta, instead of like talking about how much change your product can deliver, just make sure that you're actually changing the product. You know what I mean? So that's like it's so important, especially for entrepreneurs.
No, that makes perfect sense because at the end of the day, the goal is to one, obviously to your top line, right, and to generate as much revenue to your top line as possible. But how you increase your bottom line is by increasing lifetime customer value, or one of the ways, right? And I think that kind of hits the nail on the head. Is if you have a shitty product and you're just going out there and selling a shitty product, your lifetime value of that client is going to be nothing, right? It's going to be just the front end offer in which that you're offering them, and you're not going to be able to retain that client long term, right? With anything, whether it's a product or a service, you're not going to be able to turn that into a repeat buyer. So I think that's great, and again, I hope everyone here is listening. And Dave, thank you very much for your time today, and I hope we do this again very soon. And guys, I'm going to drop a link below to Dave's group. Okay, it's a group specifically built around how to build your business and sales, and it's really powerful. He's got a lot of great content in there, so I'm going to put that link below in the comment. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to him. And Dave, thank you again very much. There's a ton of valuable information and ton of value that you've driven to this group, and I'm greatly appreciative. So, you have any last words or anything that you want to say before we sign off?
Man, if you got a really close business at a high rate, keep it simple. Set appointments and set appointments in this way, right? Share what you've done with other customers, right? Your customers are your sales pitch. That's like really the key to sales.
Wow.
People don't care that much about the features and benefits. Just talk about your customers that you're helping. And you can borrow customers. If you work for a company, you can borrow the customers that your other colleagues have sold to, and now they're your customers. They're everyone's customers, right? You're from the same company. So your customers are your sales pitch, and that'll help you kind of like have the right mindset.
Wow. No, that's incredible. And guys, again, thank you for tuning in. Brett Heimann here, marketingains.com, with the sales expert, Dave Omachonu. We will be doing this again very, very soon. So have a great day, and we'll see you guys very soon. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks, Brett.